This story is about remapping a system, and I have a longer version of this story below on this page, and I made that version like 10 years ago, which probably was, I don't know, maybe 2015-ish. And this is a story about something I did in 2007. I'm going to tell a shorter version of it up here, and if you're interested, welcome to look at the one below on this page. And here it goes. This was an important story in my life. So, as I've said on previous videos, my mind is full of models. And one of my models is a model of energy transfer that I learned by doing experiments in my room when I was a kid. And this one I learned from marbles and ramps. I was doing experiments with marbles and ramps because they were repeatable. And I was between 6 and 10, and I would roll a marble down a ramp and visualize what was happening, taking snapshots of the marble in motion and noting the increase in the sound, how loud it was, which was due to friction. I didn't know the word for friction, but I knew it was related to how fast it went and how fast it slowed down this marble. And also, I noted I could take snapshots of it in motion and I could compare them. And I noted that the distances between the snapshots of the marble from the previous spot got bigger as it went down the ramp, which meant that it was going faster. And I knew that it went faster in relationship to the height. And I knew that relationship was not linear. So, and I knew that it was more than linear and exponential. And I could see that in a model that told me that. And I could hear the sound of the friction at these snapshots in time and note that the proportionality of the sound matched the spacing of the distances. So in other words, the pitch of the sound, the volume of the sound, the decibels of the sound was related to how far apart it was at snapshots in time, which meant it was related to the velocity at that snapshot in time. And I could see this in a spatial model, color-coded model. And this is the basis for my project, Project Honey Light. This is the model I decided when I was 10, I'd do something good with this model. So if you're watching this, this is part of the good thing I'm doing by explaining it and using it in this way. And I've used this model to make money by modeling business systems in the same way, which comes later in this video series about converting potential money into kinetic money. And I made software called Visualizer, which comes a little bit further downstream from this, where I actually built software that does this. And this is the story of translating it. So translating it from a four-dimensional color-coded model to a four-dimensional iconic representation of the model that I could explain to other people and then program into a computer. So here goes. And again, there's a longer version of this, but basically everything in my mind fits into a model of cognition that describes 6 simultaneous perspectives. And those perspectives are: who or what am I looking at? How many are there? Where are they? When are they? How did they get here? And why? And each one of those has a picture, a unique picture. And somehow my mind converts them all into one thing, a spatial representation of that at snapshots in time that tell me what's going on, what's around me. And I can navigate these models in different ways visually. Things are organized and color-coded in my mind in this way. And so, for example, if you can imagine one red apple, can you imagine 10 apples red? And then can you imagine another row? Imagine them in a row, and then imagine another row under them, 10 rows of 10. Now you can imagine 100. And so you can imagine 100 apples. So that's an object is an apple. And how many are there? 100. Next one is where are they? And imagine them on a table in your kitchen. Imagine when is it? It's whatever time it is right now. If you look at a clock, that's when. How did they get there? And you can go all the way back to energy from the sun and photosynthesis, water cycle, genetic reproduction of an apple seed making a tree. 20 years later, an apple growing on that tree through lots of different processes. Someone picking the apple, bringing it to a store, putting it on a shelf, you doing work, trading that money you got from that work for that energy from the sun. And now it is on your table, and that's how. And how is a flow chart. And what I just said is a flow chart. And you can go back as far as makes sense for whatever the system is. And why is always a multivariable plot of the two most important things. Why is there an apple? And what the why model, there's an infinite number of whys. So picking the most important reasons and plotting them against each other is important. And I explain that in this way because I have a model of that for lots of apples, all the apples, different size apples, different apples in different stages of growth on trees, different color apples, thousands of apples, and the apples in the grocery store, on the shelves, or in the bottom shelf, second shelf, third shelf. Those that are scale, those that are paper bag, those that are plastic bag, all the things connected to apples are in a model. How do you like them apples? And so I wanted to explain this model because it's more than just a way of categorizing and accessing information. It is a model of thermodynamics, the relationships between energy, information, and rules. And the story I just told you was basically a single snapshot in time. That's called the static model. But if you sampled an apple tree from a seed and you said, how many apples are there? You know, where are they? When are they? How do they get there? And why? You started at the seed and imagine the tree growing. And you took a snapshot every day for 20 years. Those things would be changing. The tree would be growing. So the wheres, the positions of the apples would be shifting. Different times of the years, there would be more apples than other times of the years, there would be no apples. And it's possible to create a model of this, spatial model that represents this dynamically at snapshots. And if you can do that, then you can navigate the snapshots back and forth and see the state of something. And the something that I was doing this with was a marble rolling down a ramp. And before that, it was light and heat and vibrations and other things. But the reason I did marbles is because I could repeat it. It was repeatable. I put the marble in the same place on the ramp. It did the same thing every time. So I would just vary the marble up and down the ramp, learning all the different combinations of everything that was happening. And so I thought, you know, when I was 10, I'd do something with this, something good. And I was telling this story to my friend John in 2007 at a place called Burning Man, my first time there in the desert. And he was curious about like what I was doing. And I told him in 2007, I was going to do this eco project when I was ready based on this model. But there was a problem. Problem with this model is hard, is that it's a color-coded spatial model, and it exists in a part of my mind that doesn't have access to words. It's completely spatial, my own language. It's like my own language. And that makes it a perfect secret, which is another video in this series, which is a thing you know, only you know, in a language only you know. But you know it completely, but you can never tell anybody because there are no words that can translate it into something else. So this story is about translating this model. So in 2007, my friend John said, well, sounds like it's, you know, important. You do this. It always felt important. And when I got back from Burning Man, I figured out how to do it. And this video describes that. Is basically, I imagined, in this case, a business system. And I took a single snapshot of it in my mind, of the state of it with regard to the money, which is how much, was really customers, but how many customers were there? Okay. How much were they worth, which is the money? Where are they in my funnel, sales funnel, or the operational side of the business, which relates to where are they on the sales funnel and where are they on the income statement? Are they in the operations piece? Are they on the marketing piece? Where are they? And this relates to potential money and kinetic money. So potential money is on the sales funnel. Kinetic money is on the income statement. And I can see this in a model. I learned this when I was 15. And so I was imagining a single snapshot of this state. Basically, how are all the processes in the business? And why is about customer behavior. Why do people trade value for worth? And that's all about delivering what the brand promise is and things like that. So I could see all this. So I was like, okay, like I'm going to translate this. And when I was 12, I built this machine, which was a design of a perpetual motion wheel, even though I know it would spin around forever. I was just curious how long it would spin around. And I learned, what I'm describing now, I learned then when I was 12, is that if you can freeze a system and put a grid over it, then you can keep track of the position of everything using this grid. And in the model I did when I was 12, I had a grid that was 10 by 10, 10 squares by 10 squares, which is 100 pieces. But this model was 100 by 100, which is 10,000. And this is the biggest one I ever did. And at first, I was like, no way. This would be too big. But it felt important to do it. And I was so inspired by Burning Man and the art that I saw and the magical world of people creating things that I was like, I'm going to do it. So I sat on my sofa, the green sofa, and I started in position 1-1, which is the upper left-hand corner. And imagine a grid with 100 by 100 squares, which is why I told you the apple idea. And started in the upper left-hand corner, and there was nothing in that position. And then I went to position 2, 1, which is the second one, second column, first row. And then 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, all the way to 100. And then I went down and then back and then down and across and down and back. And I could keep track until I hit something, because not everything was full, maybe 75% full of energy, information, and rules. And when I got to an element in this model, I compared it to a translation framework that I have that breaks the spatial model down into those 6 pictures. And that's how I did the other machine I made, same approach. And for that element, that square, or really a cube, but in this representation, a square on a grid, I determined if it was a what, a how many, a where, when, a how, and a why, based on how it moved. Because I had more than one snapshot. The image on this page is one snapshot, but I had multiple. And I can go back and forth between them, and I can see how things move. And things that are energy move rotationally. Things that are information move in this linear way. And things that are rules move like a wave. And the rules connect the energy to the information. And so in those 3 things, energy, information, and rules, contain all 6 perspectives. So for every square out of 10,000, I moved them around in my mind and compared them to these 6 perspectives, and then broke them out into 3 structures, which is the energy structure, the information structure, and the rules structure. And where I ended up was that the money, the energy in a business, or the energy of a marble rolling down the ramp, can be represented by gears in motion, spinning gears. And in the case of a marble rolling down a ramp, you start with an infinitely small gear. And as you release the marble, the gear gets bigger, snapshot 1, snapshot 2, snapshot 3, snapshot 4, until it gets to the bottom of the ramp, and then it hits something, and then it shrinks again. And the speed that it's spinning is related to the sound that I could hear, which is proportional to the energy that I was hearing, which was the energy of friction, which is proportional to the total amount of energy as a function of that. So basically this is a way to see a marble. And in a business, the energy structure is based on a funnel, the sales funnel, where you start with the number of people that have heard of your brand. And then there's a number of people that can, buy what you're selling. And then a number of people that pick up a phone and call you, and the number of people who actually hire you, and the number of people who actually pay you. And you end up with these gears that represent the money, the value of the money at each of those stages. And I did, back to this story, I had to start over 3 times because I lost my place. Took me 8 days to do this. And I didn't sleep much. It was hard. This was the hardest thing I ever did. Hardest thing I ever did. Because when I lost my place, I had to start over. I couldn't pick it back. I couldn't hold it in my mind, the construct. So I had to start over. And it felt like if I didn't finish, it would kill me. That's what it felt like, because I was so close to getting it out of my mind, this thing that's been on my mind since I was a kid. And I knew if I couldn't translate it, no one would ever understand what I was doing, and no one would understand, how a visualization of energy transfer can be used to do something good for nature and make money along the way. So basically the thermodynamics of business systems. So the story of like the ins and outs and what have yous of this is below if you want a longer version. And I guess I want to say about remapping a system is if you can visualize like basically all the parts of a car, and then visualize like inside a car, and then visualize them on the ground in front of the car, and then reassemble them into something else that's not a car, but would be like more like the part that moves the car, the gauges that measure things in a car, and the math of thermodynamics that convert the energy in the fuel into energy in a machine of motion. That's the same thing. So this was an important period of my life, those 8 days. I believe it was October 2007. And I'm happy I made it this far.